What are ethics? Simply put, ethics are standards of conduct that guide our behavior. Because leaders are in positions of influence, they carry the responsibility of adhering to ethical standards of conduct and avoiding misuses of their power. However, it is challenging. Ethical behavior is complex and often problematic for managers for several reasons. First, it is not always easy to discern what is the right behavior. Sometimes the line between right and wrong is blurred and not always agreed upon. Further, many ethical dilemmas involve a decision between two rights or two wrongs. Second, although unethical behavior is associated with negative outcomes, it can pay off as well, especially when the culture values profits over doing the right thing. In fact, some evidence suggests that managers who sometimes behave unethically can still be quite effective. Third, legal norms and ethical norms may not align or agree. At times, the law has not yet caught up with the ethics of a particular issue. At other times, the law isn't clear about what is right. Furthermore, the law outlines the minimum standards, while ethics outlines the optimal standards, taking morals and consequences into consideration. Fourth, managers can directly influence others' ethical behaviors by modeling the appropriate behaviors and indirectly shaping an ethical culture. An ethical dilemma is a decision between two or more courses of action. Managers are responsible for assigning work, evaluating performance, and sharing opportunities with followers. Although these decisions may be based on standardized processes and merit, followers may think that managers show favoritism towards some employees. Clearly communicate how work is assigned and evaluated. Be consistent in evaluating performance and give employees the chance to explain their perspectives regarding their own performance. Managers may also use punishment to deter employees from certain behaviors, but it should be used sparingly. Some managers use it too much, others not enough. The thing to remember about punishment is that you must be prepared to follow through. If you don't follow through, your passive response can actually reinforce the undesired behavior. When you do follow through, you reinforce trust with all employees. You'll also want to clearly communicate which behaviors are punishable and explain the disciplinary process. Managers are also responsible for handling harassment concerns. When managers knowingly allow harassment to occur, they can be held personally liable in a court of law. Because harassment of any kind can have negative consequences for the victims, witnesses, and organization as a whole, managers are urged to take all complaints seriously. Do not shift the responsibility to the Human Resources Department or other party. Make sure the issue is dealt swiftly and fairly. Work-life imbalances can lead to negative consequences for employees and their organizations. Managerial support can go a long way in helping employees manage their multiple roles. However, since each employee's situation is likely different, it can be tricky to apply the rules evenly and consistently. Once performance expectations are clear, explain the reasons followers can use to ask for accommodations and how these requests are evaluated. We use different approaches to assess these ethical dilemmas. These approaches help us make sense of the situation and can influence whether we perceive an action to be ethical. The first approach, called virtue ethics, focuses on the person's character. The second approach focuses on the action. Deontological theories consider the universal duties and responsibilities surrounding a behavior. The third approach, called teleological theories, focuses on the outcomes and consequences of the action. Virtue-based ethics focus on the personal qualities such as courage, humility, and honesty that encourage ethical behavior. Examples of virtues include kindness, responsibility, wisdom, excellence, and commitment. Using this approach, we think about a person who embodies some ethical quality and imagine how this person might behave in this situation. For instance, you might imagine a person with integrity, for example, Mother Teresa, and then identify how she might act. An action is ethical if it embodies the virtue and would be something a person with this virtue would do. Of course, you can imagine that this might be difficult for some people to do. Our values, attitudes, and motivations influence whether we are even capable of doing this. Using a deontological theory, we consider the action itself to evaluate whether it meets some universal standard, principle, or moral. Universalism considers whether the action would be acceptable by other standards and align with universal rules. Some believe that we should behave in a way that everyone else would also consider acceptable. One of the challenges is that sometimes universal standards conflict. Imagine trying to do the right thing when it most certainly will hurt some people. Teleological theories focus on the consequences of an action. The action itself is not right or wrong. Instead, it depends on the outcomes of the action. Every action should then be analyzed in terms of its costs and its benefits to the majority and minority. Simply put, these theories are those that look out for the good of the majority. Utilitarianism is one example of such a theory. Using this approach, we make decisions that produce the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. A manager might distribute rewards so that everyone benefits in some small way and only a few receive less than they normally do. Let's compare these three approaches using an example. Suppose a colleague asks for your help in finishing a project. Following the utilitarianism approach, you would focus on the notion that helping can lead to positive consequences for both of you. Following the deontological approach, you would think about how helping might fulfill a universal desire to treat others how you want to be treated. According to virtue ethics, helping means you are a good person. No matter which perspective you use to evaluate a particular behavior, the point is to think about ethical dilemmas in different ways and consider different components of the situation.